Check 1, 2, 3.
Check 1, 2.
Welcome to the Coaching Life Podcast. I'm Pat Martin here on campus on another beautiful day. The weather's always good here when we're recording. Here with my buddy.
Whether it is or not, we're going to talk about it.
My buddy, fellow coaching colleague, Professor Stewart.
Oh, get out of here.
Coach, how'd your first class?
You remembered.
Yeah, your first podcast journalism
I had it
class
yesterday. Yeah, it was good.
How'd it go?
I felt like it went well. I guess we'll find out if all 30 students come back.
That's true.
They got some time here to decide to drop it, so we'll find out.
So your next class is Thursday, right? Tomorrow.
Yep, it is.
Yep.
It
Good
is.
deal. So
I had fun. Got through about
Bet you did.
2/3 of my material, which is good. 'Cause I way over prepared.
2/3 of your
I did not want to
material.
be underprepared for an hour and 20-minute long class.
So, Coach, hour and 20 minutes. You got
Yeah,
through
2 times a week. Yeah.
You got through 2/3 of your material. There's an easy answer. There's an easy solution for that problem because that's a problem. You only got 2/3 of your material there. I would say, why did you?
Yeah, but the way I created the modules is week by week, and this first week is an introduction to the course because they've got some may drop, or add the class if it opens up, if a spot opens up, and so there aren't any assignments. We're going to get into the first module next week. There's going to be 8 modules, 16 weeks of class, and so I can adjust. I can adjust. Thursday will be all
You
right.
kind of plan some flexibility into that.
Yeah.
As opposed to asking the students to stay another
That's what your solution was going to be.
another 30 minutes.
Oh,
to
I'm
get
not done with my stuff, so we're going to stick around here. That would have probably eliminated half of the class for Thursday, right? If I wanted to get rid of some of them, I would say, hey, I'm going to keep you guys an extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty ridiculous idea.
I let them out 3 minutes early, though, 3 or 4 minutes early.
Darn right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I'm just saying, I bring that up, and I didn't know that happened. This is the first time I talked to you about your class, but and people listening out there probably think, what the heck is he talking about? Because it sounds like why would you ask students to stay another 30 minutes just so you could cover the other third of your material? You wouldn't do that. No one would do that. But, I think that's not always the case. That's not always the case. And I think as coaches, as parents, as managers.
So are you saying, back up a second.
Okay.
You're jumping us right into our conversation
Absolutely.
for today, aren't you?
Right, yeah.
I just realized what you're doing. So are you saying, just to clarify where we're going here, that it sounds ridiculous to suggest that a professor say, I need you guys to stick around for another 30 minutes because I didn't get through everything that I needed to get through? One, obviously it does sound ridiculous, but it's also going to be ridiculous because those students all have another class to get to.
Right.
Or some other commitment they need to get to.
And they may not.
And so
they
we would
may
never
not have a scheduled class.
So you would rarely ever have, a few minutes is one thing. 30 minutes is a whole other thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you would
right,
never
absolutely.
have a professor do that. You would. I've never in my life could I remember in my college years having a professor do that.
No.
Right. And not very many of them let us out an hour early either for
True.
a 2-hour class. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, early. Yeah. But in terms of sticking to the time, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and why wouldn't they do that? Especially
There you go.
at that level. Obviously, you made a couple good points there. One, the student's paying for that experience, so it's going to be hard pressed to get a student to pay for you to take their time away. That if they have that option, you would have 15 kids or students. I shouldn't say kids. They're still kids, right? Are they kids?
Well, in my opinion, they're not.
They're not. Okay.
They're adults, in my opinion, by the time they get here. They should be. I think we should expect that of them, don't you think?
I think they should expect it out of themselves.
That's a whole other conversation.
Like whether you want to
Let's write that down. Let's come back to this one because that's going to be a whole other conversation someday.
Yeah.
The perpetual adolescence that it seems like we've created in this country. We're talking about years and years of it. We adopted it from the French. I can go back and do the history of it. The word adolescence didn't even exist until, I don't know, the mid 50s or so.
The old, well, they are just kids.
They're
excuse.
not. Yes, you're not 24 years old and a kid. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That anyway. Is a good topic. Maybe we'll talk about that next week.
Let's do that.
But yeah, they may not show up next week because, hey, I've got a professor here that has no respect for my time. Right.
Yeah.
So they may
And it would be legit.
Yeah, sure. So that's one of the primary reasons a professor wouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is, and we were coming into today, we talked about this having this the title of what you say matters, right? And as preparing for the podcast and thinking about what that means and how we're going to make it applicable to our listeners, I kind of thought it's not that is probably a little bit too focused. I would say not just what you say matters, but what you do matters, how you behave matters. And when I say that, and when we're going to talk about it, I think obviously it's true in all walks of life, but specifically right now, as coaches, as leaders, as parents, how we behave matters. And I think it's a topic that sometimes we don't think about enough, and we're not intentional about making sure we're behaving and saying and doing appropriately, or B, we're not taking the time to make sure we're getting better at those things. So maybe we could talk about that today and help those coaches and leaders and parents that might be wondering, why are my kids listening very well?
True. Yeah, this is a big ball of stuff here to talk about. What you do matters. What you say matters. When you initially gave me the thought to, and we always kind of say, well, this is what we're going to talk about this week, and then you and I run with it sort of on our own and research it and think about it and jot down some notes, or not, just come in and talk about it. And in my mind, when I'm thinking what you say matters, what I hang on with that is the truth of how language. And when I say language, I'm not talking about, good language, bad language. Like, I'm just talking about language in general, rhetoric, how it was speaking. It determines culture, team culture.
Sure, absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, we're all about culture, and we want our teams to have great culture. But what we tend to not think about is what builds and creates our culture. And it's not the posters you put up in your locker room. It's not about those. The sign, you could have a sign that says whatever, play like a champion today, and everybody hits it on their way out. But if you're not speaking like a champion, if you're not behaving like one, that then it doesn't matter what your mission statement says. Your culture is built by your behaviors.
Yep. Your culture is who you are,
and your words.
Yeah.
And how you speak. And I think sometimes we don't pause as coaches. We don't pause to consider how valuable or detrimental our words are, and how much trust we are building in our players, or how little trust or how much trust we are losing with our players,
right,
based on our words.
Yeah, trust was a word that I have in my notes, and that's, I think we want, we have some ideas of how we want our teams to, or maybe some of the qualities that we want our teams to possess. And I've got discipline. We want our teams to be able to trust each other, trust the coaches. We want our teams to be able to communicate well with each other. And those are all like it's the type of things that you're talking about. Like that's, you could see that on a wall. That could be a poster.
Yep.
Discipline, trust, communication, that's what builds great teams, whatever. But, how do you get there? And are the habits that you have in your practices and your games and as you, behave and speak as a coach during those times, do they promote those things that you're trying to reach? And it's kind of a vague, I thought that's kind of why I thought, well, if we just talk about what we say, it might be a little bit too vague. But I wanted to get to hopefully we can get to some some exact scenarios where how we behave in those situations could be impacting the way our teams are behaving.
Well, let's back up for a second and talk about why that's important. And it's something that we may not realizes. It's something that we may not realize as coaches, and that is the impact of the coach-athlete relationship.
Yeah.
Or you back up another step further, not even realizing that the interaction between coach and athlete actually is a relationship.
Yes.
Coach and player have a relationship, and you have it with players, plural, you have it with your team, but you also have a relationship with each player. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a good one or a bad one, it's a relationship. I have a little relationship lesson that I do sometimes, and I've done it at church. I've done it in different organization meetings, things like that, because I think it's important for people to understand how relationships are developed and how relationships get stronger and how they deteriorate and sometimes die. And it's something that I learned when I was in college in my interpersonal communications class. My actual degree is in communications. And so I remember doing a study, doing some research, and did an essay on it, on how a relationship is built. And if you're going to build a relationship with anyone, there are different phases that every relationship goes through. And this is very helpful for marriage couples, because you want to get to the intimacy phase, which is, it's more than just physical. When I talk about intimacy, I'm talking about getting to know somebody on their deepest level and staying there. Well, that's the third phase of a relationship. Before you get to intimacy, one, you got to make contact. You're not going to have a relationship with anybody unless you make contact. But as soon as you've made contact with somebody, guess what? You've begun a relationship.
Yeah.
Whether you realize it or not.
Regardless.
And so as a coach, we have made contact with all of our players. Therefore, we have a relationship. It may not be there aren't very many good relationships where you just make contact and you stay there. Right?
Yep.
So what's the next phase? The next phase, they call it acquaintance. You become an acquaintance with somebody when, after you've made contact, you both decide, and you know what relationship scholars will actually tell you, that within 14 seconds of meeting a new person, you will determine subconsciously in your mind whether or not you ever want to see this person again, whether or not you ever want to hang out with this person again. Like our minds, like you will decide this person's kind of interesting. I'd like to do coffee with this person, or I don't care to ever see this person again, right? And it's not something that you're going to start thinking about that now as you meet people.
Because I wonder if, I'm sure that, well, it's based off the person, obviously. I wonder if I have a deficiency because I don't
think we notice it. I think when you first meet somebody for the very first time, your subconscious mind is going to decide whether you like that person or not.
Yeah, but I like seeing people for the second time. Does that make sense?
Well, sure.
Like when I see people I like that. Like I like that connection. I guess that's the relationship.
You have a lot of acquaintances probably. And you do. I know you. You have a ton of acquaintances.
Yeah.
And you may have a lot of intimate relationships too, but not very many people have a lot of intimate relationships.
Right.
Where we're talking best friend, marriage partner, somebody that knows everything about you. This is the kind of person that when they start speaking, you almost know what they're about to say.
Yeah.
You could finish their sentence for them.
Gotcha.
But those acquaintance relationships, those typically end up being, you're not going to have that level of intimacy with your players as a coach.
Sure.
But we all have, in those acquaintance relationships, those are people that you work with. Those are extended family members. Those are people that you do life with. The majority of people you do life with are your acquaintance relationships. But getting back to it, the coach-player thing is a relationship, and relationships are built and they're made strong based off of communication and trust.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think we realize that.
Yes, I agree. Or we just we don't care to we don't care to put the time in for those types of things. We just think it's supposed to work without that.
Because of the
And-
structure of coach player.
and you know, that's, I guess you would say that's the role power aspect of, you know, of a team. You know, you would think, well, I'm the coach, so because I say something, my role dictates that it will happen, that it'll take place. And sometimes that's true,
Yeah.
but a lot of times it's not. And even when it is true, sometimes it's not being done, I would say, for the right reasons or with the right amount of passion that you would expect, you know, or that you would want, desire as a coach building a program.
Well, go ahead.
Well, if you have a thought on that, go ahead. I was going to move to, you know, you talk about trust and communication. What, you know, let's talk about those things. But
Sure.
you have something to add?
Well, no, I was just going to say that what I think sometimes as coaches, what we don't understand is that the relationship between us and our player is a performance factor. It leads to good or poor performance, depending on what that relationship is like.
Absolutely.
And we're not saying that it's always going to be perfect and that you always got to be nice. As a coach.
No, absolutely not.
That's not what we're saying at all.
Right.
It's just it's understanding the power of your words and your communication, and how you communicate, and how and just being trustworthy. Like, go back to the example that we talked about earlier. If you're a coach, and the professor student example, right? If you're, I mean, one way to just flat out lose trust with your players is to not be honest with them. Is to say, you know,
Right.
I mean, like if I'm coaching, if I'm coaching and I send out to my parents on my team app or Sports U app that we use, and I say, you know, practice is from 5:30 to 7. You know, we're going to have, you know, an hour and a half long practice. We usually go longer than that. We usually go, you know, we don't start practice at 5:30. We usually will start it at 4:30. I don't know why I said 5:30. 4:30 to 7, and you know, we got a little extra daylight. It's late spring. It's nice out, you know, and we go past 7 a little bit. They get out by 7:10. No big deal, right? They
Right.
understand that leeway,
Sure.
right? If I'm holding them till 8, they
yeah.
may not let me know. They may not say.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They may
right
not
there.
say,
Yes.
"Hey, coach, an hour is a big difference. You know, my kids got homework. We didn't get to eat dinner tonight. You know, it makes, you know, they got chores that they still got to do, and that, you know, but and rarely will I hear about it, but it's not a good thing. And also, so that's a parent perspective. The kids are feeling the same way. They're feeling this as they leave. They're like, "Daggone," you know. Now, if I do
And
that,
they may not say it either.
If I-
and you know what? Some kids may like it. Like, they may be like,
Sure.
oh, yeah.
yeah, we need this. Yeah, and that's that. But on a high school team, most of them aren't.
But you know what? I've got another example that kind of contradicts that too, because I would say it isn't always just about like. Like, I think there's two
Yes.
main qualities in a coach. I think for a team to really follow a coach, they either have to trust that coach or like that coach. Mm-hmm. One of the two.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's an example that kind of says, kind of puts a different twist on that. Punishment. If a coach tells a player or a team, if you do this, this is going to happen,
Oh yeah.
and you don't
follow through with that.
enforce that, guess what that does? That hurts the trust that team. They may like you a little bit more there. Not really. I don't think
The
they would
one
like you
player
anymore.
will.
Yeah, the one player.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Good point. They may appreciate that, not having to go through that punishment, right? Or the consequence, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. But you're going to lose a little bit of trust from the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And that's bad. That's not good. And you're right. Like, there's so many problems that can come from that situation that you're talking about there, because you know, you get parents angry at you in the background.
Yeah, that's not good. Definitely not
In the
good.
background, you know, they don't, if they're not coming to you. And that's, you know, that's one of the things too that you know, it's not a great situation to be in when you're talking to, like, do you really want to hear from a parent, hey, I don't like the fact that you just held my kid over, you said an hour.
Yeah.
Held my kid over an hour. Do you want to hear that? No, probably not, but kind of you do, so that you can have that open line of communication. But if you don't have that open line of communication, because, you know, a lot of times
Yeah,
as
you kind of
coaches-
do want to hear that. That means that that you're approachable, right? That they actually feel like they can come to you and talk to you. If you're not hearing it and you know they don't like you may not know they don't like it. Trust me, let me tell you, if you're a coach and you do that, they don't like it. Nobody likes that, especially if you're doing it all the time. I get it if it might happen once, right? And then you get on there and you make or you tell everybody, hey, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We said that we were going to end at this time, but we kept them, and this is why. This is what we got accomplished. That's on me. Yeah. I said we didn't do what I said. And so I apologize for that. And I should apologize for that as a coach. I think sometimes coaches feel like we're above apologizing for something that we've done wrong.
We do. But that's ownership, right?
Yes. Take ownership for it.
Don't we want our players to do that?
And you know what? If you're going to practice until 8 every night, say we're practicing until 8 every night.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's the other way is just as bad. I mean, like if we say we're going to get out at 7 and I let them out at 6, then one, I feel responsible to stay there until every last kid is picked up. Half my kids drive, half of them don't drive.
Right.
So now, the parents have already made plans till 7 to go to the grocery store or whatever. And then their kids calling them saying, hey, we're done with practice. They're like, oh crap, it's 6 o'clock.
So now they have to be there.
Now they feel the pressure of having to get back there and get them. It's just not good. It's just not good practice to just not be who you say you're going to be, to not do what you say you're going to do. Just do what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of what we were getting at there from what you say matters. So in that situation, you say practices from this time to this time, your goal should obviously be to stay within that time frame, and
there's going to be grace within a few minutes either way. Like you don't have to be like, I know you're a stickler. If you say you're going to let practice out at 7:02, it's going to be 7:02. If it's 7 o'clock,
I've gotten a little better about that. The guys know, like,
we're going to run one extra baseline here just to get to
make sure we're at
7:02.
7:02. The guys know, like, they know during practice, because I'll say things like, "Hey, we're right on time." This 3:40. We're hitting the cage to hit. I'm like, that's a practice, boys. Let's keep it up.
Yep.
They know that.
I feel that. I feel that. We've got it scheduled down to the minute.
But I've gotten a little better about being flexible about those types of things too, which I think is important as a coach. That was one of my weaknesses coming in as a varsity coach. Is if things weren't going exactly to my practice plan.
Yeah, you got a little bit anxious about it.
I would freak out, which is another good example of why it's important the way we behave. Yeah. So I'll pick on myself here a little bit. It's an odd example, but it's a true example. We're in the middle of practice. My practice plan's all jumbled up. Yeah. We're not going. I know right now we're not going to get done what I want to get done, or it's not going to. The times aren't going to work out, or whatever it is. I'm going to have to cut something, whatever it is, and I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
And the players can see that frustration on my face, and my coaches can see the frustration on my face.
And things may actually be going well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Practice may actually be going exactly the way it needs to.
It's probably doing better than what I had planned, So it's not a problem at all. But so. I would say that's almost an act. That's an act of discipline, or that's an example of behaving in a disciplined manner. When things aren't going your way, you still have the same energy. You're not. You don't allow it to impact you. What are we always telling our players?
We ask it of our players.
We ask it. We don't. We demand it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't. You shouldn't be frustrated.
Act differently than you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So as a coach, if in practice, and not just. That's not the only situation, but maybe there's a
lot of times it's in a game situation.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We don't expect our players to be uptight and tense and out of control during a pressure-filled situation. But then as coaches, we behave like maniacs, or we are not ourselves in those moments where discipline would really be good. We're modeling the type of behavior that we don't want to see out of our players. We need to do better on that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to evaluate that. Think about that. How do I behave in these situations? Is that how I want a player to behave? And if it's not, we need to fix it. And I think very often as coaches, we don't do that. We're not looking. It's always, the focus is always on how the players are behaving, how they're acting, how they feel, and it's never turned around on ourselves.
Yeah, so the point then, the thesis of this is we need to recognize that in many ways, as coaches, when I say we, I'm saying we coaches need to recognize that in many ways, a player's performance is directly linked to their relationship with you.
Yeah.
To that relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you seen a player, like in the NFL, a player just doesn't perform well on a particular team, and then they fire the coach, get a new coach, and this guy, well, I'll give you a recent example. Last year, Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
he
that's a
was
good point.
terrible with Urban Meyer. Just terrible.
Yeah.
The whole team was terrible, right?
They were.
And Urban's proven he's had some good teams. I mean, look, there's a Netflix special on right now about his Florida team and the success that team had. And of course, you're getting behind the scenes looks at some of those relationships there too.
But what's primarily different between college and pro sport? Urban Meyer or a contingent,
Yeah.
a representative, sat down in those people's living rooms and said, "Hey, we want you on
Yep.
our team."
Yeah, well, I mean,
built a-
say what you will about Urban, whether it was fake or real, they believed it, right? I mean, and so
absolutely.
some kind of
There was relationship power
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So they said when they showed up on campus, well, this
Mm-hmm.
guy believes in me. And then they had some players that kind of found out that, well, they don't really think that I'm starting caliber quarterback.
right.
So they went somewhere else and became the number one pick in the draft,
Yeah.
and unfortunately went to the wrong team. But anyways,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, and it's impossible for us to really truly know what the relationship was or wasn't like between Urban and Trevor Lawrence. But listen, when they bring in Doug Peterson, and all of a sudden,
there was a change.
yes. There was not just a change in performance, there was a change in demeanor. There was a change in the way you saw Trevor speak at press conferences. There was a change in I remember I saw recently, and I've been keeping an eye on the Jaguars because Nathan Rourke is there,
Yes,
and this is the
looked
week
really
we're going to
good.
find.
He's making
if
that
they
team.
release that son of a gun, I mean,
They deserve every loss that they get.
They
from
do.
here on out.
Well,
they're not going to release him.
they're going to
There's
try
no
to
way.
bury him on a practice squad, though, I'm afraid.
I don't
He
think
deserves
so.
to be a number 2 somewhere.
so.
And I don't think he's going to be the number 2 there.
You don't think so?
I don't think he's going to be. I think Peterson's already said that. Is it Beathard? Bettard? How do you say his name?
Oh,
Tyler.
Is it CJ? Oh, it's Tyler?
CJ Beathard. Is it Beathard?
I don't know.
Beathard?
I've only ever read his name. I've never
Yeah,
said
I
it
know.
out
I've
loud.
never heard anybody say it out loud. So anyway, so going back to Trevor, there was a moment last year at the end of in the playoffs, I believe, because they made the playoffs, didn't they? Or they made the wild card. I think they
I can't remember.
man, they came on strong. They
I'm
came
a Browns
on strong
fan, so
at
I
the end of the
typically
season.
forget last season pretty
But
quickly.
it was a very important game, an important moment in the game where they were at the goal line, and it was 4th down, I believe. And Lawrence looks over at the sideline, and he's like waving at him, and he's pointing himself like, "I got this, I got it." And it's like, okay, Lawrence is calling the offense for this play, and you would not have seen that Trevor Lawrence in the early days of the season,
Right.
Early
That's a
weeks
good
of the
point.
season.
I've always felt that way with there's always instances of that, but I think when the Reds got rid of Dusty Baker,
Yeah, Dusty was always known as a player's manager.
yeah, and people are like, well, Dusty can't win the playoffs. And I'm like, well, yeah, that may be true, but I was on the other side of, I think because of who Dusty was, the Reds made it to the playoff. They were kind of overachieved, and when they weren't underachieving by not winning, they just got beat, by better teams and
Yeah.
teams that performed better on that day. But when Dusty Baker left that clubhouse, you saw
Consistently, it was different.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely,
on
right. And now it seems like they've got. It's not like Dusty Baker is the only guy that
Oh, yeah.
could,
Yeah.
manage those types
Right.
of things. That, different people require
And
different
you don't
types
have
of personalities.
you don't have to have the same kind of personality as Dusty Baker.
No, absolutely not.
Also,
Right? Yeah, for sure. But there is a lot of value in that relationship. Mm-hmm. And how much time are we, as coaches, building that? Thinking about the way that our program works and the decisions that we make, how it impacts that relationship that we have with our players
Yeah.
as individuals and as a team. Something we need to think about.
There is, and there have been real studies on this as well. I mean, it's not just something that we're just
Well, we've talked about it a bunch of different ways throughout the last couple years of this podcast, but we're
Right.
just focusing in on it today in a different way.
Right. I'll
gotta
give you
study.
I'll give you an example. Yeah, this is on Olympic athletes. I saw this on athleteassessments.com, performance through people, where they're talking about how this relationship does impact, this coach-player relationship impacts performance directly. And one of the most compelling studies of athletic performance was conducted in 2008 on the Canadian Olympic team. Yes, Canadians do have Olympic teams. Sorry, that was a little bit of a jab. I'm teasing.
I'm
Do we have any listeners from Canada?
probably, and
The Rourke family, probably,
why,
right? So,
why are we picking on Canadians all of a sudden? I don't know.
sorry, Curtis. Sorry to your. Yeah, I'm doing Curtis's wedding here in a few months, and I got to be careful.
Curtis
talking
was-
about Canadians. Like
Curtis was picked. I don't think I sent that to you. Prospected to be the number one
Yeah.
pick in the CFL draft.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah.
him.
He's. So anyway, they determined They found that there were 5 distinguishing factors that stood out and were exhibited by the athletes who delivered their Olympic personal best or medal-winning performances in 2008, in the 2008 Olympics. These were the 5 key themes that they identified for the greatest levels of success.
Okay.
In this order. Number 1, the coach-athlete relationship.
There you go.
And then number 2, I'll go ahead and read the others. Number 2, high-level athlete self-awareness, which is a good thing, a good topic to talk about. Number 3, quality of the training environment. Number 4, the management of the competition environment. And number 5, support mechanisms. And these include things like the people in the athlete's life. So everyone from family to friends and staff members that were surrounding them and such. But when you look at that list, 2 of the 5 factors that created the top levels of success for these athletes involved relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships with other people. But the number 1 factor for success was the relationship between the coach and the athletes.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
It's probably not a coincidence that, the most successful coaches in the history of our sports are coaches that people talk very fondly about.
Yep.
Even the ones that have stories written about them, like Bear Bryant, that he
Sure.
wore the Junction boys out, but those guys still loved him. Well, why?
Yeah.
That's something to dive into. And I think as a coach, there's probably been people that thought, oh, Bear Bryant wore those kids out. He ran them to death. I'm going to do that. And it didn't work. And they wondered why it didn't work. Why did that not
Yeah.
work? It
Man,
worked for Bear Bryant.
How often do we see this on a local level here? Who's the legendary basketball coach that you think of in this very conversation in our area right now, still coaching?
Coach Caldwell.
Coach Caldwell, Howie Caldwell. Yeah. And he's one of those guys, like, I don't know, how do you describe Coach Caldwell? I mean, he's gets the most out of his players. His players would run through a brick wall for him. All those cliches you could say about him. I saw him.
By the way, they don't always like him either.
Exactly. I saw him in the classroom, and the way he coaches is also the way he teaches. You sit and talk with him. The way he talks he is who he is. He is the same person that you speak with on the street as he is on the court.
That's so important.
And here's the problem, though. People see his success, and it's okay to want to emulate people who are successful. I mean, that's how any of us learn. We learn from other people, right?
Everything I know, I've stole from somebody.
Yeah, right. But the problem is, like you said, Howie makes him run a lot. I'm going to make him run a lot. Howie stomps his foot. I'm going to stomp my foot. Howie yells at him a lot. I'm going to yell at him a lot. And you know what? It doesn't work for everybody.
No, you're right.
Because you're not being you. That's Howie. Howie's being Howie, right?
I had a group of kids, or a couple kids, tell me, I should say high school students. I'm getting self-conscious about calling them kids now because you.
High school students are, they're still kids. They're still kids.
Maybe, or I don't know. We'll talk about it.
I guess it depends.
They said, you're different during baseball season. I was like, really? Like, yeah, you're kind of scary.
You're scary.
I'm like, well, I've never been told that before, and I didn't like it because I don't want to be different. You know what I mean?
That's not a bad thing. That observation that they made it's not always a bad thing.
No, I was glad they told me.
Yes, there's a set. They what they're seeing is they always knew you on an interpersonal relational level, but they're sensing a separation now between authority figure and player. That's my guess.
Yeah, maybe.
They're trying to adjust to that different, because you were such a well-known person before you started becoming the varsity head baseball coach at a high school. You were, I don't know. I mean, not that you weren't a coach before, but it's it's different.
It is
at the youth level than it is.
Definitely.
And I'm guessing, a lot of kids came to you and they felt a friendship type relationship to you, but now it's a little scary because I'm seeing you differently now.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe it's a good thing, but it's something that I need to, and I have been evaluating.
And that's actually a good factor, a variable, to bring into this conversation. And that is, we certainly are not, or I'm certainly not suggesting that coaches need to be friends with their players. In fact, do not be friends with your players.
Yeah.
Right. There's a difference between relationship,
also
having a good positive relationship with them.
Yeah. Also, a weakness of mine coming in as a varsity coach, and I knew that, and other people told me that, is that as a recreational coach, you had that tendency of being, and as an assistant coach at a junior high level, or you had a tendency to be a friend, as opposed to a mentor, or a leader. Not saying that those can't coexist, but
you were in roles before where you could come along beside a player, as opposed to, and sometimes you need to come along beside them even as a head coach, right?
True.
It just requires discernment. I mean, I don't know. You can't be that all the time.
Right. And there's times to not be and times to be. Yeah, that's true.
Man, this stuff's tough to talk. I mean, it's tough
like
to
you
explain.
said, we're not saying be friends.
Right.
We're not saying, make them.
And we're not saying be enemies.
That's true. You're right. That's why I was like, when I was thinking about
what are you guys actually saying?
What are we saying?
We don't know what
can we
saying.
do?
Yeah. I think I don't know. It's one of those things where you may not know exactly how to define it, but you know when it looks wrong when you see it, right? When you hear it, it's not right.
Yeah. Communicate. Here's an example. This is true for, we've talked about everybody's a coach. When you get to a certain stage of your life, you're a coach, whether you want to admit it or not. I call a lot of people coach.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you call me coach for? I don't coach anything. I'm like, yeah, you do. You're a coach.
It provides a really good talking point.
Yeah, you may not realize it, but you're a coach. One of the things that my dad actually pointed out to me, as far as communication goes, that's something that I think parents need to do a better job of in nurturing a love for sports, or really anything that they want their kids to be passionate about. My dad pointed out to me one time. He's like, I talked to Maya the other day and asked him when he was playing this week, and he said he didn't know. And I said, oh yeah, we haven't told him yet. He said, don't you think that's a little bit important for the kid to know when they might be playing? They wake up on a Thursday, not for sure they're going to play, and then you tell them, okay, go get ready for your game.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. And it's not. Okay, he's just a kid, so it's almost like, well, it's like taking him to a haircut, or taking him to a doctor's appointment or something like that, where these are things that you have to do and that you don't really consider them needing to know because they're just the kid.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to develop communication, like if you want a kid that communicates well, that doesn't not tell you where they're going when they go somewhere.
Yeah.
Then you need to communicate with them.
You need to do that with them.
And there's aspects in lives that we overlook for opportunities, to do that.
Yeah.
I go in and tell my kids where I'm going if I leave.
Yeah,
even if they know, all right, you still do now. And I'll tell my dad,
Yeah.
We don't even live in the same house sometimes, or we don't live in the same house. Sometimes I still tell my dad.
You better
where
tell
I'm
your
gonna
wife
go.
where you're going when you walk out the
Well,
door.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
She always knows. She has me on live 360.
Well, think about this. That's parent to kid. What about coach to player? I asked one of my kids this summer all the time because I wanted to come watch him play in summer ball. I'd message him early in the morning and say, hey, thinking about coming to the game tonight, you pitching? He's like, I won't have any idea until game time.
Yeah.
Like starter. This is a starter, right?
Right.
Not a reliever. Like, I don't know if I'm going to come in relief. This is someone who starts. It's like, well, how do you not know? How do you know? And so I don't know. And maybe coaches don't, maybe people don't, maybe have different philosophies about it. But if our kids know when they're pitching the week of, I let them know, hey, here's the plan. It could change.
Right.
But on Monday, Brady's pitching. On Wednesday, Ethan, you're going to be going. On Friday, it's going to be Peyton. And that's the plan, right? If we have to use you guys in relief, it's going to be, that'll get jumbled up. But at least this is what you can prepare for.
Right, that flexibility part gets you in trouble sometimes. I know
Sure.
I've got some, it's not easy. I understand that. Like, here's the plan. You're going to pitch on Wednesday, and then it doesn't happen. They end up pitching on Thursday or Friday.
Well, and
it's normal.
And that's when you have to tell them, listen, this is why we have to adjust the plan, because we got to win today.
Right.
And we're going to use you to win this game today.
Yes.
And then you say that to them, and they're like, okay.
Yeah. Because if you ever, think about coaches out there, have you ever gotten a situation where you told a kid he's going to start today, and he said, my arm's sore?
Yeah.
And you
had that when you played us.
I did.
The kid that you told me that you had written on the lineup card you sent me ended up not being the kid that started. Why?
That's right.
Because his arm was sore that day.
I just wanted that was just a dirty trick really by me to throw you off.
To throw
I
your
just
number
wanted
one
to
against us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But and your first response to those situations are, why didn't you tell me?
Right.
Kid's like, well, why didn't you tell me I was going to pitch today? You know what I mean? So again,
It's true. It goes both ways.
We are the model of the behavior that we want our
Yep.
teams to, to have.
Without a doubt.
And if we're not looking at that and we're not thinking about that, then we're probably not going to get the outcome that we want.
And listen, what do you want as a coach out of your players? You want them to respect you. You want them to respect your role as a coach. You know what? Your players want that too. Your players want you to respect them as well. Respect their time, respect their effort, respect their, if they have a good attitude, let them know. Respect their attitude. And what that creates then is mutual respect.
Yep.
And mutual respect has to be there in order for the best performance to be able to occur. I'll read a quote from that article that I mentioned the example of the Olympic team on the Olympic study, and it says this: if mutual respect doesn't exist, the coach-athlete relationship is compromised and negatively impacted. Mm-hmm. If there is no connection, there can be no engagement, and the result of this is poor commitment, disharmony, lack of enjoyment, and general distrust. Ultimately, poor performance is the outcome, and no amount of money spent on better equipment, better facilities, or support staff will overcome a poor coach-athlete relationship.
That's good stuff. And I agree with it. I really do.
Yeah. You can build the nicest facility, you can get them the nicest uniforms. They could look the best out there. They could be playing on the best. But if your relationship with them isn't strong, if there's not mutual respect, you're not going to get the best out of them.
Yep, that's good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Everyone's got it now, I think. Completely understand what we were saying, and they're ready to
apply it
to their teams and their families and their work teams.
I mean, that's what matters,
like
right? Head knowledge is only goes so far. You got to be able to. You got to hopefully, and that's our goal. I mean, that's why do you and I even come in here and do this every week? Because we want to hopefully apply these things that we talk about to our own lives and to our own or to our own selves and coaching experiences.
I always tell people when they come through and tell me, if I give the sermon on a random Sunday that Justin or the preacher's not there, if I get mercenaried out, contracted out to do it, they say, you had a really good message. It's like, well, or someone will come up there and say, your message really spoke to me. I feel like you wrote it just right for me. I was like, well, to be honest, I wrote it for me.
Yeah.
Because it's, I get a lot of, you're led to talk about the things that you're lacking a little bit in, but
And
awareness.
That's the secret of where our topics come from.
Yes, right.
On the Coaching Life podcast, right?
Absolutely.
We're led to talk about the things that we need to hear the most.
Yep, for sure, Coach. I apologize to everyone out there for my allergy
You
induced.
sound unwell. Okay, allergy. Good deal.
I can't be allergies because I've been running a fever, but
Well, thanks a lot.
well, hey,
I've been sitting 4 feet from me this
told
whole
you
time.
I'd wear a mask.
That's the perfect
You
distance.
did- you
Well,
did-
within 6 feet, I could get that.
You didn't respond. You didn't
6
respond
feet
to
is
me.
the scientific
Oddly enough, when
distance
I
that you and I would have been safe.
when I asked you if I could wear a mask, I would wear a mask. You just ignored that comment.
Sure.
You didn't respond. Next week on the Coaching Life podcast.
The efficacy of masks.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.